I really feel like where we're at now, like leaving AA and getting grounded outside of the addiction and outside of the recovery cult is a really cool place to be. Like alcohol was self-medication, AA was self-medication. And then this dark night of the soul of leaving AA is like, oh, okay, here is who I am experiencing myself without medicating myself with these things. It's just getting to know who you are without Alcoholics Anonymous. Hello and welcome to the Sobriety Bestie podcast. My name is Kirsten. I'm super stoked you're here today for this Grieving AA series. Today we are wondering, what if I never feel okay again? Because this is part 4, which is depression. If you haven't started any of the videos in this series yet and you want to start from the beginning, I will put the link up here. I'll put links for all the videos we've covered so far below. Number 1 is denial, and then number 2 is anger, number 3 is bargaining, and 4 is depression. So here we are. There is often a crash that comes after leaving AA, I'd say, because we're not getting that daily reprieve anymore. If it worked for us, it definitely worked for me. I was getting a daily reprieve, which means I was having a biochemical experience from my interaction with Alcoholics Anonymous. That means that literally when I'm sitting in a meeting, not because I have a spiritual malady and because AA works, it's because when I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm hearing people bare their souls and I relate to them, I'm feeling oxytocin. Maybe I'm feeling dopamine because I'm finishing my steps, or I'm sharing or getting serotonin or any of the other neurochemicals that are being released from my participation inside the rooms. People are saying, I really related to what you said, so I'm feeling good about myself, so I'm getting a little dopamine boost or whatever, right? So leaving AA does give a crash for some of us, and not having that daily reprieve, that biochemical experience from participating in AA, nothing to do with the spiritual malady or the daily reprieve, being that Bill's path to God is what we need in order to simply live. None of that. Literally, I'm relating to someone. It's a human thing. It will happen in any group. It's not specific to Alcoholics Anonymous, although I did believe that at the time. But also when we're grieving something, because to me, leaving AA was a tremendous loss. I was in AA for 10 years and I left 5 years ago. My whole life was revolved around AA. My community, my friend group, my identity. I'm an alcoholic. Part of my purpose, I had a purpose outside of AA too. I'd already had a business at that time, but part of my purpose was to sponsor people and to help the alcoholic who's still suffering and all of that stuff, right? And so there's a tremendous loss for a lot of us when we leave. There's a lot of grief when we leave AA. Once some of the anger starts to wear off, which is a vibe, okay? It is a vibe to feel that anger, because for a lot of us, we've been wronged in a lot of ways in AA. But once some of that anger starts wearing off, or maybe even before that, because it's not linear, we can have what feels like a depression. We might feel nothing or everything all at once. Maybe you feel numb, tired, hopeless, unmotivated, or even like nothing matters. You might wonder if leaving is a huge mistake. A lot of us wonder that. You might want to crawl back into something, anything that feels safe or structured. Maybe you're thinking that you want to go back to AA. I don't know if you should, by the way. I'm just laying out the stages of grief here and leaving AA. This certainly is not you failing if you're having feelings when you leave AA. It's part of what the grief could look like. I know it's part of what my grief looked like. Specifically, what this might look like is thinking, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm lost, disconnected, untethered. I felt super untethered after leaving AA. I no longer had the structure of the meetings. I no longer had the community that I had for 10 years. AA had discouraged me from my relationships outside of the group mostly, so my whole life was built inside of AA. And so, yeah, I felt very untethered. Maybe that's how you feel as well. Maybe you feel like, what is the point of any of this? Or you just want to go back to the way things were, even if they weren't perfect. I think this is part of why a lot of people will go back to AA even when they don't want to. Maybe you think that you should have just stayed and kept your head down, even though you knew that it felt right to leave. There can be all sorts of thoughts. I had some very scary thoughts that come in this depression area with my grief of leaving AA. I felt like I was making a terrible mistake, that I might die. So I had a lot of fear. But I also was feeling like maybe life isn't worth living. So I had some dark thoughts during some of the stages of me leaving. And that's very much a part of my grief leaving AA. I'm obviously not your mental health provider or anybody's, so please seek one if you're feeling depressed. I just want to explain the stages of grief in case that's what you're going through. Likely, what's occurring is the nervous system is recalibrating after an intense disruption. That's what was happening for me. So we left the system that told us who we are, how to live. For me specifically, I was leaving a system, Alcoholics Anonymous, that told me how to live, how to think, how to feel, how to orient my life. They say it's like a way of life. It tells you how to live, essentially. And so there is a lot there. It's not necessarily easy to shake off, depending upon how long you were there and how deep it went for you. And to be clear, even if you wanted to leave AA and you really wanted to go, it doesn't make the grief disappear. I wanted to leave AA, but I had a ton of grief. I was obsessed with AA. I loved it. I was like, I literally cried on Bill Wilson's grave for my life. I was like, thank you for channeling the big book. Now I'm like, that's so cringe. But I really loved it. I really believed in all of it, So it was a tremendous loss. And losing all the friends and losing the structure, and yeah, it was a huge loss. So there was a lot to be depressed about because it was a tremendous loss for me. So there were a lot of tears, there were a lot of fears, a lot of feelings, and that's just a normal process of losing something that meant something. Whether you felt like it saved your life or whether you're losing your connections, the loneliness can be brutal, especially if I felt like I couldn't talk about it because that would have been betraying AA or messing it up for the newcomers or whatever. I still had a lot of that indoctrination in my head. So it was very isolating for me because I felt like I couldn't say anything to anybody. I would say part of what makes it so hard is the loss of community, because it's not just losing one person, it's like losing everything. So it's not just grieving one friend that doesn't want to talk to you anymore, it's like all of the friends. Now, I had one friend who left before me that I was still friends with. He left like maybe a year before me. But when I left, I didn't know anybody else who was gone. And slowly over the first 6 months that I waited a couple of months before I ever talked about with anybody that I left AA. But then when I started telling some of my closer friends, like the women that I sponsored asked me why I left. And so I slowly would tell them why I left. And one by one, they're like, oh, and they woke up too. And they're like, oh, it's baloney. Okay. And they left. And then we were able to stay friends. But when I first left, I didn't have any friends that were safe. So there was a period of time in the beginning where I didn't have any ex-AAs that were my friends. So depending upon what your experience was and how long you were in AA and how deep you were in AA, you're going to have a different grieving process afterwards or different feelings. Now let's look at some journaling prompts, and feel free to pause this and write right here, right now, or come back, or just let these like noodle around in your head and see if anything comes up for you, however you want to do it. What feels heavy right now? Can you name it without needing to fix it? What parts of yourself or your life feel like they are missing? Have you felt this kind of emotional fog before? And if so, what helped you then? What did AA give you that you're afraid you'll never find again? What does your body need right now? Rest, comfort, permission to not be okay? What would it look like to meet yourself with compassion in this moment? And if you feel lost, feeling lost doesn't mean that you made the wrong choices. It just means you're between identities, likely. That's how I felt. It was like a dark night of the soul. I felt like I was between in who I used to be, the AA true believer, and who I hadn't yet become, the person who had deconstructed enough of AA to have like a grounded sense of self or stability, really like internal stability with my identity, with my emotions, with my worldview, with my beliefs. So in the in-between period, I call it's like not really a term, but the way I think about it is it's like the after recovery void that void. It might be almost a little bit nihilistic, where it's like, feels like nothing matters. Like that would be the depression. For me, it for sure felt like a dark night of the soul. Like, I don't know, I've had like a lot of dark nights of the soul. So yeah, I had a dark night of the soul when I left Alcoholics Anonymous. I also had one when I got to AA. But so I had a dark night of the soul when I left Alcoholics Anonymous, that void between who I was and who I hadn't yet become. And so in that void, there was all of this grieving stuff that we're talking about. The first dark night of the soul that I had, that came with like a bit of a feeling of like depression with it, like a grief, because it's like an identity breakthrough or evolution or upgrade or changing of your identity. It's like evolving to the next self. The first time that happened to me is when I was in high school. I accidentally, because I didn't know anything about mushrooms, I didn't know anything about psychedelics, I literally thought it was like drinking a beer, and I got mushrooms from somebody, me and two friends, and we ate them all. We didn't know about dosage. Now I know that we took a hero's dose, and I thought this was going to be like drinking a beer, and it wasn't. All of a sudden, I was consciousness existing in space. I had no name, no identity. I was not a human. I was like floating through space as consciousness expanding and whatever. So when I finally came back to reality, or this reality, I was like, whoa, that was weird. And I was in this nihilistic kind of, I guess, depressed. Is that the right word? I just felt like nothing mattered. That was like my big epiphany from my mushroom experience, was like, all the stuff that I'm stressing about, it doesn't matter. That's not really what's happening here. And so I came back and I didn't know anything about psychedelics, let alone integration or anything like that. I was literally in high school. And yeah, this is before I'd ever been on the internet. So I didn't know what any of this stuff was. And I just had that nihilistic view, like nothing matters. I also felt like that when I got to AA, but it wasn't as hardcore because I was in a community. I felt like my old life, the drinking life, is over, but I'm not yet into the new life, the sober Kirsten life. I don't know what that looks like yet. I'm still trying to figure out, like, let go of old friends, make new friends. Let go of old ways, old habits, make new habits, right? Like let go of drunk things, do sober things. So that was also like a dark night of the soul for me, but it was in such a community space and I was being love bombed as you do in AA, as you get in AA. They love bombed the frick out of me. And probably for you too, right? You were love bombed in AA. And so that identity shift, breakdown, breakthrough, upgrade, whatever you want to call it, from drunk Kirsten to sober Kirsten, it wasn't as big of a blow because there was so much love bombing and community around. There was a 12-step path. There was a plan. There was a cult ready to take me in. And then, yeah, then at 5 years sober, I also went through like a big dark night of the soul. And that was with my emotional, like healing work, like my inner child stuff. And that was a big thing. I don't know if it's normal to have so many dark nights of the soul and go through this like void period where there can be like the depression that can happen with like the grief and stuff. I don't know how much of that is related to just me and maybe autism and ADHD and social masking and stuff. I still have some questions. I'm still open to, I haven't like solidified how I like think about this all. But I know that when I left AA, I went through another like long dark night of the soul period where the old identity is over, the new one's not here yet. And I did have a lot of those depressing thoughts. And it was the darkest. Like it was 2 days specifically after I left AA. I'd say it was a couple of months after I left AA even, where there was 2 days where my thoughts were very, very scary for me. And I've never had thoughts that scary before in my life. And that was during my depression, of grieving AA, or the dark night of the soul after AA. I'm saying this a lot of different ways because we're going to have different experiences with this. And let me know in the comments if you've had a dark night of the soul before, or if you had one when you left AA, if you're in one right now. I actually have some videos on Dark Night of the Soul. I just thought I'll put them up here if you want to take a little look-see-loo and check that out. There's no rules to healing. So whatever your journey is like, whether you are feeling like it was all good, or whether you are angry about it, or whether you are bargaining, or whether you're in the depression of it, which can feel like forever, or maybe you're in the next step, acceptance, right? But in the depression, what I want to throw out here is it always changes. Whatever we're going through always changes. For me, like when things are going really well, I get delusional. I think that it's always going to go really well. And then when things are really tough or rough, or I'm in a dark night of the soul, or this after recovery void, or the depression part of the grieving, I'm basically saying the same thing multiple ways. I feel like it's never going to end. Like there's that delusional about the hopelessness. And so the reality is it all changes, always. So the highs, the lows, they come and they go. And for me, the practice then for me is not to get too attached to the highs and know that they're not forever, and to enjoy them while they're here. And then to not get too attached to the lows either, and know that it's also a phase and that it's also gonna shift. So I just want to say that, like, give you a virtual hug if you're going through it right now and you're in the middle of it. Like, this too shall pass. I don't mean that in an AA way. My sister literally has that tattooed on her arm, and she never went to AA. My grandma used to say that. My grandmother went to AA. It's actually solid advice to remember. Oh, it's going to make me like emotional. It's solid advice to remember that no matter how hard whatever you're going through right now is, it will pass. It is not forever. There is light around the corner. I don't know when the corner is going to come. And this is from somebody who's been like pretty deep into some dark nights of the soul, where it does feel like you're kind of swimming in this bottomless, now we're getting all mystical here, this bottomless pit of like, I don't know, the void. When is it going to end? Like, what's down here? Like, it's so scary to go in there. And then whether you're processing a psychedelic experience, or your childhood trauma, or getting sober, or leaving a recovery cult like Alcoholics Anonymous. Is this making any sense to you? Do you relate to this? Do you have experience with dark nights of the soul? Have you experienced the depression with leaving AA? It's all temporary. That's my belief. I'm definitely not here to tell you how it is. I'm just telling you like my own experience, right? This is about your critical thinking and you trusting yourself. Would love to have this be a conversation in the comments. Went on some tangents here about the good old dark night. It's always so cool to come out of a major, I don't know, spiritual breakdown, breakthrough, or identity shift, and to land more firmly. And I always think that there's not going to be any more, and there always is. But I really feel like where we're at now, like leaving AA and getting grounded, like outside of the addiction and outside of the recovery cult, is a really cool place to be. Finally, for me, it's getting to know myself the first time without self-medicating. Like alcohol was self-medication, AA was self-medication. And then this dark night of the soul of leaving AA is like, oh, okay, here is who I am, experiencing myself without medicating myself with these things. And look, if you are medicating yourself, I'm not judging that. It's just getting to know who you are without Alcoholics Anonymous. Although I did do ayahuasca 2.5 years ago. That was bananas. I have some videos on here about my ayahuasca experience too. It was very, very helpful, but I don't even like psychedelics. They freak me out. I love learning from them, like who I get to become as a result of having those experiences. I just don't actually enjoy them. I don't know. I like reality. I like being grounded. So this has really gone a direction I wasn't expecting. Hopefully you found some value out of this video and unpacking your experience with leaving AA. There's probably as many ways to unpack it all leaving AA as there are people. I know for me, part of my unpacking AA was to go down to Peru and to do those ayahuasca ceremonies. I felt like that was the next step in my healing journey. I trusted my intuition, even though I was scared, and I went and did that. So I don't know what it's going to look like for you, but I'd love to hear what it's looking like for you if you want to share it in the comments below. And I will see you in the next video, which is all about grief. If you want to join our deprogramming community, it's called Deprogram Lounge, and it's free. I'll put the link below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.